This is the fourth of 4 videos covering the introduction to strategy for the ERPsim manufacturing game. The series of videos all follow the SAP Labs and Textbook 3rd edition. This video and the preceding 3 videos presume you have some ERPsim and, by default, SAP experience. That might be the distribution game, the SAP Labs, and you have some manufacturing game knowledge. So if you've done Labs 1 through 3 that are in the textbook, you have some basic information. Lab 4, which is kind of a hidden lab within the textbook, is the production process. This video also presumes you've at least watched the first video and hopefully you've watched the second and third. Now this video is covering, of the 4 different roles you can have within your ERPsim team, it is covering the planner and analyst roles. And the planner and analyst kind of need to know everything. So really, you kind of need to go back and watch those videos about the sales manager role and the production manager role because you need to know them. So this is all about the entire company and how it works. Now you can also see that I have 2 roles that I'm putting together into one video. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of crossover between these 2. So it's really getting into the planning and analytics side of things, looking at the data, whereas the sales manager and production manager are really in a place where they are doing the day-to-day. So every simulated day they're doing a bit more work. Now, again, as I've said in the other videos, if you have 1 person on your team, you have a lot of work to do. If you have 5 people on your team, you're going to spread out even more within this. So realize that this role can be expanded and can also be contracted. In addition, you always need to be communicating with your team members. If it's just you, that'll be easy. If it's 2 of you, that'll be easy. If it's 5 of you, that's going to be more difficult potentially. But realize these are the active people over here, and over here are the 2 that are really spending a lot of time outside of the simulation, the scheduled simulation, working through the data, and then using their knowledge to guide where the team should be moving. So telling the production manager what to do and the sales manager, but everyone should be communicating throughout. Your strategy, just like everybody else, it's revenue minus expense equals profit, the net income. The profit fits in your company valuation, which is how you're going to be judged within this simulation. And the planner and the analyst, the role is to constantly be working towards increasing profit in the company valuation. So there's a lot of quantifying and otherwise qualifying strategies. So what do? Let's say it's the very first simulation, the very first time you're doing this. It's round 1, day 1. Well, your company has no finished goods inventory and no historical sales data. So during that first simulation, there's not a whole lot to do. There's not a whole lot to analyze. So my recommendation is that you help to figure out production. There's no point in strategy if you're not producing. If your manufacturing isn't right, you're not making any money anyway. So understand the production process as well as your manager and try to get that under wraps. Try to get your productivity percentage up as high as you can. So again, after the first simulation, you can start analyzing. You have some data to work with. Go through the reports. What can you find? Within this video, I'm going to start opening up some of the different reports that haven't been covered in other videos. And you can kind of see, well, this is what I could do. Try connecting to the server with OData. Then you can set that up. Maybe have some analytics tools set up that you can then use for the next simulation so you have real-time updates. I can tell you for sure ERPsim is ripe for prescriptive and descriptive analytics. Not necessarily predictive. It's a little too simple for the predictive analytics, but it doesn't mean you can't. So if you want to jump into that, you can, but I would say prescriptive and descriptive are it's really ready for those. So again, your role, analyze the data, plan for your next simulation. Try to figure out how you can quickly figure out in the next simulation which products are selling, where they're selling, and which price is the best price for selling them. Again, profitability. Determining this quickly impacts your starting forecast. It impacts your pricing and marketing strategy. So really figuring all of this stuff out early is going to really help your company. So quickly analyze your sales history, and as you get into the next simulation, try to know as early as possible. This is the product to go with. Increase this forecast. Increase this price. We can get more profit out of this price, out of this product. All the way around. So future simulations, plan to spend round 1 or more building your sales history. Use the knowledge you gain between simulations to communicate with your team and tell the production manager, this is the product, and then you should do this. The sales manager, here's the sales trends. This is the product you should be working with. This is where we can be the most profitable because, it's all about profit. It's the company valuation, but a lot of the company valuation is profit. Then what? Once you kind of have it figured out, where you can tell the production manager what's going on, you have that part of the analytics worked out, your sales manager is comfortable taking direction with which pricing and marketing to do, then you switch your focus. How do you win? And that's your next goal. So you might be doing okay, you might even be winning, but you can do better. You've gotten the basic things down, production and sales. Now, what else can you do? Two things to remember going into the simulation. The manufacturing game is built, it's designed this way. It's designed with more demand than supply. So if every team has the best production and best price, there still isn't enough supply to meet demand. So round one, day one, if everyone had the best production, best price, knew exactly which products to produce, at which quantity, at sell them at what price, you're still not hitting the demand. So you cannot supply enough. So keep that in mind. That's one thing you're trying to do. How can you take advantage of getting more of that demand? And then also realize it's all about your company valuation, which is mostly profit, but it also takes into consideration your liabilities and assets. So quantify all of your decisions, anything that's strategic, quantify it. If demand exceeds supply, can you manage your assets to increase profitability? Take advantage of that demand that's out there. If company valuation includes liabilities, can you manage your assets to lower your liabilities? Does it even make sense to do that? All of this can be quantified through prescriptive analytics. The textbook discusses quantifying the strategies, so make sure you read through the sections on strategy, read through the sections on strategy and OData. There's a lot of information within the textbook. It takes some experience for it to actually start making sense, and then you just start crunching numbers. Once you get into it and start doing the analytics, you can just keep going and going and going. You don't really have enough time in a semester to build all the analytics tools that you can have. Most important of the things you can be doing, quantify your company valuation. Know how the company valuation is calculated and what you can do to increase your company valuation. Quantify your production parameters. There are starter instructions for this in the textbook for both the company valuation and production. Some other strategies to quantify: your loan repayment. If you pay down your loan, you reduce your liabilities. If liabilities factor in your company valuation, is that a good thing? Paying down your loan also reduces expenses. It's an interest expense that you're reducing. Does that make sense? Again, quantify. Increase your production capacity. This is a capital depreciation here. So it's incremental, so whatever you put in is going to make a difference, but it kind of works out for 1 million in investment equals 1,000 additional units. But remember, it's depreciated. It's not an instant expense. Another option is decreasing your setup time between products. This is an instant expense. You're essentially paying a consultant to help you out with lean manufacturing, and this requires a specific nonlinear formula, which is part of the ERPsim documentation that you'll want to look up. Quantify all of these. Every single one of these has a quantifiable purpose, and it all depends on your market, the competition that you have, and your team strategy, which one or ones make a difference. It may even be something that you determined that maybe this is best round one, day one, this is best round two, day one, and this is best in later rounds. Again, quantify. So again, loan, setup time, capacity, it depends which one is best. And your team's strategy makes a difference. If I were to tell you that setup time is what you should do, so put all of your money every time you have it into setup time, well, if your team's strategy is to have one product, setup time doesn't make sense. If it's a highly competitive market, if you're just fighting for every last cent, having any type of production, additional production, doesn't make sense. You're having a hard enough time selling what you have. Why would you need more? Why would you want more? So again, it depends. It really depends on the market and your team strategy. But all strategies need to be quantified and qualified. Talk with your team, make sure everybody understands what they're doing, and then quantify. Start doing what-if analysis. What if we put this here? What if we put that there? See what happens. Does your team even need an enhanced strategy? Maybe your production process and pricing is good enough. Okay. So again, quantify and qualify. Maybe there isn't even a purpose in having any of these other things. Now don't forget, every decision within your company is about profit. Every decision should either increase revenue or decrease expense, preferably both. So your role within this company is to make sure that revenue and expenses are optimized. As much revenue as possible, lower the expenses as much as possible. So what else can you quantify to increase revenue and decrease expense? And again, you can quantify every decision down to the cent. It's probably going to end up being more of a estimate of what it would be. But you can see, if you were to work together the analytics to a point where you can do an optimization, it'll say put this exact amount into this. And then you can try it and you can say, well, it was off by a little bit, but it did increase. So just realize you can quantify down to the cent, but it still ends up being an estimate. But again, there is enough ERPsim data out there, especially in OData, to keep you busy. So watch costs, read the textbook sections on strategy. There are some general costs like variable cost, and then there's some other costs. What can you quantify? Well, there are some hidden expenses, and they're not hidden at all. It's just, this is an actual SAP system. You have some expenses. It's not like it pops up and says, hey, did you know that it costs you? No. It assumes you know what you're doing. So warehousing cost is something that ends up being an issue. If you have exceeded your warehouse capacity, there is a daily cost for any additional inventory that you have. I'll show you that in a little bit in the inventory report where that is, but you'll want to check the financial statements, F.01, or check the balances in real time with OData to see, do you have warehousing expenses? Is it worth having the warehousing expenses? Maybe the extra cost helps out with your strategy. You'll have to quantify that. If it doesn't, you'll want to know if you've exceeded your warehouse so that you can clear the warehouse or plan for it. Marketing expenses. Again, this isn't hidden. Your sales manager put the marketing expenses in. So that person knows what's going on. But sometimes there's a clerical error. So somebody accidentally adds an extra zero or an extra character. And now all of a sudden, instead of 50, it's 500 euro per day. What if you're marketing a product that is out of stock? That is a waste of expenses. Remember, marketing expenses, when you click save, the marketing, the advertising takes effect the next simulated day. If you delete everything and click save, the very next day, there's no marketing. You want to be watching, and really everyone should be watching for this, so this is more on the analyst side of things, watching the inventory report to see, are we marketing a product that is not in stock? So there are a number of different roles that the planner and analyst can be working on, but they're not necessarily going to be the people really pressing a lot of buttons, going through the transactions. More stuff. Change the bill of materials for your products. If you look at the job aid, and again, since you've been through the production process, you know that there are multiple raw materials that come together to make your product. Now, there's only one supplier for boxes and bags, so that's not going to make a difference. That has to stay the same. But what if you see that the price of, let's say, raisins goes up? If raisins goes up so that it's becoming, let's say, 10 euro for a kilogram, that's increasing your variable cost quite a bit. Well, what if you went in and you changed your product mix and made it so that there are fewer raisins and more of the wheat and oats? Well, that's an option. Realize, though, that changing the bill of materials affects your marketing. So in thinking about the 4 Ps, the product is one of the Ps. So changing the bill of materials maybe so that you have more raisins or more strawberry might attract customer preferences. If you're doing it to reduce your cost, people don't want it anymore. So realize that if you make a change to your bill of materials, you need to quantify it. You've made a change. Did it make a difference? Did it reduce the demand for your product? So again, everything can be quantified. Liquidity planning, procurement sourcing, inventory reports, all that stuff you need to know. You need to be the one who is looking at those reports and then giving feedback to the rest of your team. So pass along the information as you see it. Be creative, blaze new trails. I've been doing this a long time, and I still have students come up with something where I go, oh, I never thought of that before. So think outside the box. If it doesn't fit the textbook classes, the solutions you've had in other classes, does it mean it doesn't work? So this simulation is built on rules that are set throughout the entire game. Without cheating, what can you do to use those rules against it? So again, if you quantify everything and figure out the perfect point, it's like printing money. I've had students who just really get into the analytics, and they come back and they say, we're doing exactly this, and exactly this, and they blow everyone away. And everybody says, well, this is unfair. You all started at the same spot. So just realize you can actually get more out of this than most teams are prepared to do. You do the work, you're going to get results. Remember, you have an entire ERP system that is showing you all the information you need to make all of your decisions, and you have a team that's helping you. So make sure you're always looking at the whole system and you're communicating. Again, if it's just you, it's going to be hard for you to communicate with other people, to get two heads are better than one, that kind of thing. But realize you have multiple roles that you need to hit. So always be talking to the sales manager, the production manager. If you have 5 people on your team, again, break apart some of these different roles so that everybody has something they can work on. Okay, how do you do it? So I've given you some ideas of what the planner and analyst could do. Just realize it's important that you understand the simulation itself, all of its parameters. It is your job to go through and be up to date on everything. If somebody has a question, you should have the answer or know where to find it. You also need to know the sales and production manager rules. What do they have to do? What would make their lives easier? You also want to know how to get the data out of the system. So OData has a number of options and it ends up being real time. Some of the SAP reports themselves can be copied and pasted, or you can export to a spreadsheet. So just realize that you can get the data out in multiple ways. There are other videos that I'll be posting that will show you how to do OData, and the textbook covers that as well. All right, here's some transactions that I'm going to go over here, just so you have at least seen them. So FB50 is the first one I'm going to go over, and from the job aid, there's loan repayment, setup time reduction, and increased capacity. Each one of these, make this a little bigger here. Each one of these uses the same transaction, FB50, and this is a general ledger. This is posting to the general ledger, which no one should ever be doing, but it's simpler to do that, so that's what we have you do. FB50. So I'll get the GUI over here, and it is a large size. There we go. So FB50. Realize that this is debits and credits, so there's 2 different lines every single time. So the very first thing, enter current date on document date, that's what I just did. In the first line, again, this is the credit line here. So it's these lines down here. And how do I have this be the right size? And you can see the job aid. I'll put this off to the side. There we go. So this will be the same for each. Making a video, stop doing that. Man, stop it. Okay, so each one of these, its first line is credit, second line is debit, and it'll tell you exactly what to do. So for the first line, the amount. It says account. I was going to say, why is amount coming first? Account, it's so small for me, I can't even read it. Account number. So this is the actual general ledger account number, 113300. And for debits and credits, I want to put in credit. So you have to have one of the two, credit, and then amount. And I'm going to do, what am I doing, loan repayment? Let's do 100,000. And it doesn't say this here, but I would press enter if I were you. Make sure you have that first line worked out, and it will tell you that it's imbalanced here. You only have 1 credit, so it won't let you save it until you do the second line. So second line, the account, 113101, debit, and it has to be the exact same amount. Press enter. Press enter just goes through and verifies, make sure everything is okay, and then save. It is quite literally the same thing for the other 2 transactions. It just ends up being different account codes. And I'll sometimes have people who get caught up in the, you may have noticed here that it's autofilling. So that one's 11000. So it did show up on this one. Sometimes it doesn't show up. People tell me it's not in there. It keeps showing me this. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Just realize this is always correct. There isn't a mistake there. Oh. Oh, it needs a date. Yeah, I'm just showing you that it is actually a valid account, and I don't even need it. So do you want to exit? Yes. All right, so that is FB50. ZMB52 is the inventory report. Listed as stock levels on the job aid here. ZMB52. So this shows you a number of different things. Here is your warehouse capacity. So it's showing you that in stock, and this is for me, for my company right now, I am below capacity. I'm just below capacity for raw materials, and I'm below capacity for packaging. And this is food raw materials here, by the way. So you can see at the top, it's storage location 2, and that's where the finished goods go. And then storage location 88, you may remember these from the labs. This is where all the raw material inventory goes. So the food raw material is down here, and the packaging is here. These are the material codes in here. So F for finished goods, P for packaging, and R for raw materials. Do notice on here that in storage location 88, the raw materials have a reserved. And what that means is every single one of these has already been passed over for production. And I can show you that here. My production schedule. Oh. My production schedule shows that I have all of these still to manufacture. Those go through round 2. And that is using these raw materials here. So if you're looking at this saying, why do I have so many raw materials? Why is that? It's showing you that they're actually in inventory and they are reserved for future production. So if you have something over here where it's showing here and it's not showing reserved here, that means that it hasn't been converted yet. And occasionally what happens is when you lower a forecast, right, there's a number of reasons for it, but typically it's because you lower a forecast and you don't convert all of the production orders, the planned production orders. Sometimes some raw materials just sit there. All you have to do is just add a forecast that will use up those raw materials and work those through again. That's something you're getting some feedback to the production manager. This has all kinds of little buttons at the top so you can organize this however you'd like and filter. This information is also available in OData. There's ZB52, ZCS02. Now this is modifying the bill of materials, and I should have stayed in here. Does it say it on here? It doesn't say it on here. So realize you have to have, I believe it's 1,000. You have to have less than 1,000 of your finished good in stock to change it. So I'm actually going to open another. So you type in the material code, and you can see the material codes are here. So I'm going to start with this one, just so you can see the error message. So ZZF04, and then execute. And it's showing you have, yeah, it's 1,000. So it's showing that I have stock, so I can't until I have less than 1,000. All right? So this is the kind of thing you want to do typically before the simulation starts, so before you have any inventory, but also before your production manager has put in a forecast and executed MRP. Is MRP is going to be using the bill of materials, the initial bill of material, so you want to change it before that is run. So I'm going to switch over to F01. So the 500 gram nut muesli, I don't have any stock of it, so it will let me change it. And this will let me change the quantities here. So here are the quantities on the side. Again, you have to have a box and a bag, but you can change the amounts. And this is a 1/2 kilogram. So these raw materials have to add up to a 1/2 kilogram. If it was a 1 kilogram box, it has to add up to 1 kilogram here. Realize that there is minimums for each thing. So the oat, which is the one that I'm in here, the oats. If you look at the oats, the nut muesli. Of course, it has oats. If you look at the nut muesli, it says on the job aid that it's 20% wheat, 30% oat, and 20% nut is required. So I have to have those minimums, but then everything else I can move it around however I'd like. Well, if I do not follow that, if I don't let it get to that half kilogram, so this is less than a half kilogram, and I try to click save, it says that a weight of 0.35 is incorrect for 500 grams. So I have to go back and I have to fix it. If you are working on this and you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to get around this, or it doesn't make sense, if you save it outside of the parameters, you will not be able to sell it. And this is, sometimes I'll have students who tell me, I have 500-gram nuts and it won't move at all. And then I take a look at it and I see that there was an error in their bill of materials. If there's an error in your bill of materials, you won't sell it. So realize that those little things where it pops up and tells you that you don't have the right amounts, you have to fix it and fix it properly, or you will not be able to sell it. Okay, F.01 is, since you completed Lab 3, I'm going to assume you know something about this, but realize this is an ad hoc financial statement. So it is not the kind of thing you can refresh. The very first thing here is in company code, enter your company code. And I'm Z, so ZZ. Select ALV tree control at the bottom, and then execute. It always pops up with this, just click enter. And this gives you a combined balance sheet and income statement. So this is where you, as analyst planner, will go through and try to find some of those operating expenses. See, I had warehousing costs in here. So I showed you that I was pretty close on the raw material warehousing costs, and it looks like I actually went over at a certain point. And I paid down my loan, right? So let's see if we can find that here. Bank loan I paid down by 100,000, and it's now, it went from 8 million down to 7.9 million. So that worked. You can also see in current assets, these are the kinds of things that they're looking for on your company valuation. So I have 1.6 million here, and I am expected to receive some cash of 693,000. So in your company valuation, it's going to be taking these two and these two to come up with your debt load, but that's outside the scope of this video. Just realize that's where you can find it, and you can also use OData and get a real-time company valuation. Liquidity planning, ZFF7B. Oh, it's at the bottom of the financial statement. ZFF7B. If you are looking at doing some sort of an investment, this is just an estimate, but this is telling you that based on how things are right now, round 2, day 1, over the next round-ish, your closing balance of cash will be over 1 million every time. Now, this does not take into account things that it's not seeing. But it is showing you owe your vendors 818,000. You have some interest expenses that are coming through for your loan, some other expenses here, and then this is your incoming cash. So this is just cash planning here. This has nothing to do with profitability, but realize if you go below this, you have to take out a loan. It automatically happens that you take out a loan, and then your interest rate goes up as well. So there's liquidity planning. ZME13 is the vendor pricing. ZME13. This is also information that should be available within the viewer, the ERPsim viewer, but just realize that as of round 2, day 1, these are the current prices from your vendors. There you go. And really, you should know all of these. So everything that is on the job aid, you should know all of these. And even though if you're not the production person, you're not going to be spending as much time going into these here. If you're not the salesperson, you're not going to spend as much time going in here. You are going to want to understand the transactions. Now there is one transaction that I showed the salesperson, oh, that's not it. I showed the salesperson that is really going to be of interest to you, and it's ZCK11. And in fact, I highly recommend that you recreate this in a spreadsheet. So prescriptive analytics, the basis for this is in the textbook, but it doesn't take you all the way through. But what you want to do is be able to figure out how you can spread your costs across more units. So this is the one way of reducing your cost. Again, the costs don't change, it's just spreading them out over more units. ZCK11 is something you're going to want to recreate within a spreadsheet. This is going to be the basis for a large portion of your what if, and this is going to feed back right into your production manager and to your pricing manager, your sales manager. All right, between the simulations, start qualifying and quantifying each and every decision. There is so much data that is out there. Communicate with your team. What have you learned? And don't just wait until 5 minutes before the simulation starts. Communicate throughout. As you come up with something new, pass it along. Analyze your decisions post-game. What were you expecting? What happened? With more data, how can you improve the next performance? So remember, that data is going to be there after you complete the simulation. Log back on and check it out. What else can you learn? Have the manufacturing game job aid. Again, your role is going to be all of this. And you also want to know all of this. So make sure that you have it and have it handy. As you can see, this takes up a lot of real estate on my screen. I highly recommend that you print it. Remember, it's an overview of the game. It assumes you know what you're doing. So things like this, that's such a quick overview of what hypermarkets are that you want to read the participant's guide to get a little bit more. So realize you also have the participant's guide and the manufacturing game slides. Now, I have this one highlighted and I have it bold and all of that. It is your role to know everything within the participant's guide and the slides. If your instructor hasn't provided these for you, they're on the ERPsim website in the learning portal, the same place where you went to sign up to pay for this. Log back on and take a look at them, download them. The job aid isn't intuitive, it's not complete, it's not a teacher, it doesn't teach concepts, it just says here it is and assumes you know what they are. The textbook, my textbook, teaches you a bit more about it, but it doesn't teach everything. And my videos, your instructor, everyone, no one can go over everything. These videos are already fairly long. Can you imagine how long they would be if I went through everything? So it is your role to read the entire participant's guide, to go through the entire slides, to read through all the sections within the textbook over and over and over, all of these, to make sure you're not missing things. It is the planner, the analyst, it is your role to know everything. If somebody has a question, you know the answer. So again, you're not doing as much of the day-to-day during the simulation. You're the one who knows how it all works. So sometimes I'll have students tell me at the end of the semester, well, you never told us, and then they say something. Like, well, I can't tell you everything. So really, I can't tell you everything. In the same regards, I can't make sure that you memorize things that I tell you in the very beginning. So some of the information I've given you already, if you're in week 12 and you don't remember that I told you in week 2 something, well, it's not a whole lot I can do. But if you go back and you reread these and you are given that role, analyst, planner, make sure you know all of this. Watch my YouTube videos. I have a lot of videos out there. And then watch other people's videos. Mine are up to date. I don't know how up to date the other videos are, but sometimes you might get something out of somebody else's video that I'm not covering, even if some of the parameters might not be the same. Remember, this is video 404. The first video is kind of an introduction to strategy. The other 2 videos give you an overview of the roles. This video kind of pulls it all together, so the glue to put it all together. They're all separate videos, but they're really for everyone, so everybody should cross-train. Everybody should understand the different roles and limitations. And again, 2 heads are better than 1. Everybody should kind of realize what the roles are going to be within this. This video 404, there are 4 different roles. Depending on how many people are on your team, you might be sharing roles. You might be doing 2 different roles, or 1 person, or 2 people might be analyst. It all depends. So get some experience and then keep watching my videos. I'll get more and more into strategy and quantifying in the future.